Okay, so today I want to talk about modes. I feel like there's a lot of confusion around them. I feel like people are a lot closer than they think. They're this close. It's just they're playing the right thing in the wrong context. Okay, so first and foremost, if you don't already know one, you'd want to know the major scale all over the neck in the 7 positions, the 7 modes. And then that's important for this because once you have that memorized and you can go from one position into the next one, and improvise between them, is you'll have them memorized in the neck, and then if you were to switch a major key, you just do the exact same shapes, same separation between them apart, just starting from a different note. So no matter what, you can change keys. You have the shapes memorized, and also again because the shapes. So you now your second position, it's Dorian, so you now know the shape of Dorian. You just depending on the major key you pick, is what Dorian. So if you don't already know the major scale all over the neck, I can show you in G major. Now I'll show you in G major because it's a friendly key. A lot of people know it's close to C major, but it's mostly because of where it is in the neck. By the time you do the 7 positions, it's comfortably right in here. You don't end up, and when you do the first position, it still leaves you room to have the Locrian behind it. Right? So I like it for that. Okay, so let's go through them. Okay, so now we'll go through the G major scale in the 7 positions. Okay, G major. From the second position, we'll call them by their modes. A Dorian, B Phrygian, okay, C Lydian, D Mixolydian, E Aeolian, and F sharp Locrian. Okay, so this is where I feel like a lot of people are going wrong. So they've learned their major scale, like we've done, okay, or if you did today, they know their major scale. They know the names of the modes. Might have even heard, like Dorian. It's the major scale starting from the second note, ending on the second note, right? So I feel like this is what's going on. They put, it's a G drone, right? So this is their G major. Right? So like, oh, I'll sound Dorian. I'll play the G major from the second note. That's Dorian. It says A Dorian. Right? Because it sounds major still. It wants to end there. It still sounds major. So what is going on? We're not getting this Dorian sound. What has happened? Well, let's find out. Okay, in order to understand where this A Dorian led us astray, we first have to understand a little bit about modes. Okay, so let's say you take a major scale. You pick any note on the fretboard or wherever, and you do whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. You're going to end up, if you started on a G, with G major. Now, that's how you get the major scale. These are all the modes, and this is what's done to the major scale in order to get that sound. So an Ionian, what you would do to a major scale to get the sound Dorian, you would flatten the third, and you would flatten the seventh, and you would have that scale Dorian. Okay. So what we have to look at is each one of these notes are the note of the G major scale. We want to look at these all as their own major chord. Okay. So now they're all their own major chords. So what's been done to these chords to make them fit inside G major? Well, if you don't have your circle of fifth memorized, I recommend that you do that, because then you know all your sharps and all your flats of any possible key memorized. You just go ahead and go into your visual memory bank there and you pull it up. So if you did that, you would have A major memorized. You would know that the notes were A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, and G sharp. Okay, so it's its own scale. So what has been done to the A major scale to make it fit into G major? Well, it's the second. It's Dorian, so it has Dorian. It has been manipulated with the Dorian formula. So flat 3, flat 7. So if you were to flatten the third and you were to flatten the seventh, okay, so we now have a Dorian, and we can see one sharp, that's G major. We can see it's just G major starting from the A note. Oh, so in order to make A major fit into G major, it has the Dorian formula been added to it, and it now fits. So of course, if we have a G drone and you play G major starting from A, it has already had the notes manipulated to fit perfectly in G major. Of course it's going to sound in. Just like B Phrygian isn't going to sound Phrygian. Phrygian has been added to B major. The formula has been manipulated to B major to fit into G. Okay, so what's Phrygian? Flat 2, flat 3, flat 6, flat 7. So again, if you had your circle of fifths memorized, there's 5 sharps in B. Okay, so B, C sharp, D sharp, E, F sharp, G sharp, and A sharp. Okay, so Phrygian's flat 2, flat 3, flat 6, flat 7, flat 2, flat 3, flat 6, flat 7. Ah, so now we have B Phrygian, but it's really just G starting from a B note. So that's why it doesn't sound Phrygian. It's simply just G major starting from a G. So how do you get these sounds? Okay, and a good example of this, I think a good analogy would be like if you were to take an edited photo and someone was trying to show you this and they edited it and they've done changes and just show you and be like, look what I've done, look what the changes I've made, what do you think? And we'd be like, well, I don't know, there's no context, I haven't seen the original to compare it to, I have no idea. So in order to get the Dorian sound, you wouldn't play essentially the G major scale just starting from a different note to get that sound. That's essentially just G. So A Dorian over G just... right? It wants to end on G because it's essentially G. So in order to hear Dorian, to A Dorian, well, we would have to hear A, of course, with the backdrop of its original scale. So if we put on A and A drone, and now play A Dorian, see that flat third? You can already hear it. Okay, so you have to play the manipulated scale over its original scale. And so that way, if I wanted to hear Dorian while I'm in the key of G, and say there was a G chord happening over there, well, I would play G Dorian over top of it. And we already know that shape, it's just the second shape from the G major scale. Now instead of starting that from A, we'll just start that shape from G. All of a sudden, it sounds Dorian. And it's for that exact reason why I think it's important once you learn whatever major scale all over, if it happens to be G today, is to then, all those shapes that you've now learned, is to play them from the exact same starting note. And that's how you'll really hear the difference between these keys, these modes. Well, keys, that's really what they are, they're keys. Okay, so then you start playing them, so that's when you hear the difference between G major. And then I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to play the B Phrygian shape, except we'll start from a G, so it's G Phrygian. Now I'll play G Phrygian over top. completely different, right? So now you can actually hear the changes that have been made to the major scale. Okay, so now everything is starting to come together. And this is what it's starting to come together, why it's so important to know at least some major scale all over the neck. Okay, so it's all coming together now. We know how to get these sounds. Okay, there's a G drone playing, and we learned all these different shapes with mode names attached to them. Okay, so now we've learned you do it over the parent scale. So now if we were to do them all over the G, starting from the G note, we would then hear these modes, right? So G major, now just skip to Phrygian just for drama, and now G Phrygian, way different, right? Okay, so now we know how to get these sounds. Now let's say I like a particular sound. I want to play Phrygian, but I don't just want to be stuck at this one note I know, G, and start to stop, right? Here's my Phrygian. I want to play it musically all over the neck. Okay, well, if we were to do Phrygian up here with the B, remember we learned all the scales. Well, the one before it is the Dorian, and the one before that's the major, and the one after it's the Lydian, after that's Mixolydian. So you know the scales on each side of it. So I want to sound Phrygian everywhere. Okay, so I put on this G drone, right? And if I start my Phrygian, that's my starting point. Oh, sorry. Well, I know that my next shape right ahead of it is my Lydian shape, so I still know the next shape. It's essentially the same notes. So I was playing Lydian, it's supposed to be so happy. Why does it still sound Phrygian? Right? Because I'm essentially still playing in that key. So when you do that with keys, as you see here, they have to end on a beginning somewhere. So what that means is that, that the modes are represented by their own keys. This is a major breakthrough. So G Phrygian over the sound of a G, Phrygian's the third. What is the Phrygian the third of? Okay, G. Well, it can't be E major. We know that the third of E major is a G sharp. So it has to be E flat major. Okay, so if I want a Phrygian sound over whenever a G chord happens, and I happen to want a Phrygian sound over that G chord, I would essentially be playing E flat major. And you might say to yourself, well, why wouldn't I just play G Phrygian? Well, if you already know the shape from the first major scale to the seventh all over the neck, well, you can now play in anything you want. Okay, so we've established that modes, they come from parent home keys. Okay, so if your G were to be in the place of the third, right, we know E major has a G sharp, so it would be just a G, so it would be the key of E flat major. Right, if you were playing G Dorian, if it was your second note, well then your parent key would be F major. So every one of these modes in the key of G, all the modes are represented by a parent key. Now a cool, interesting, quick way I've figured out how to get to that key is to flatten the sixth, make it major, and then spell it out in the order of 3, 2, 1, 7, 6, 5, 4. Okay, so in the E flat major scale, it's got 2 flats, or 3 flats, sorry. E flat, F, G, A flat, B flat, C, and D. Okay, and now in the order of 3, 2, 1, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 7, 6, 5, 4. And make them all major chords And those are all the parent keys that represent each of the modes of G major. So if you were to play the G drone, play a G major chord, you're going to sound major. Play a G drone, play an F major scale over top, you're going to sound Dorian. Play an E flat major over a G, you're going to be Phrygian. Play a D, and you're going to be Lydian. And C, you're going to be Mixolydian, and so on. Okay, so let's do that in a more familiar key. And this should be easier to visualize. C major. C, D, E, F, G, A, and B. Okay, so flatten the sixth. Make it major. Spell it out. Okay, A flat major, it's got 4 flats. A flat, B flat, C, D flat, E flat, F, and G. Okay, so now it's got 4 flats, and put it in the order of 3, 2, 1, 7, 6, 5, 4. Okay. See, that's the A flat major scale, but we want it in this order. Okay, so 3, 2, 1, 7, 6, 5, 4. Okay, so every one of these chords as a major chord, its own major separate scale, are all representative of the C major's modes. So if you were to play a C drone and you want it to sound Dorian, you would play the B flat major scale and you would just end it on a C note if you want. Or you would play the A flat major scale. Okay. And so on. That little trick works for any key. Okay, the key of E major. E, F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C sharp, and D sharp. Okay. Flatten the 6. Make it major. C. This one should be easy because we made C major out of it. Flatten the 6, make it major. Alright, we know 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Alright, put it in the order of 3, 2, 1, 7, 6, 5, 4. Alright. Five, 4. Make every one of them a major chord. Or major scale, key, however you want to look at it. Whatever one you started this process in, put your drone on, that'll be your drone. And play each one of these over and you will get the mode sound. Just like the other ones, okay? So you play the E major scale over your E, your parent home key, you're going to sound major. You play a D major over the E, you're going to sound Dorian. C over the E, you're going to sound Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, and Locrian. Now, something interesting to look at here is, of course, it's represented by G because E minor is the relative minor of G. So if you were to play the E minor scale but started from a G note, you're still going to sound minor because the formula that's been added to E major, those notes still have that same characteristic. So even though you started on a G, you will sound minor. Okay. Okay, and this last and final example I'm going to be doing in the key of E major. One of the reasons is because if you saw what I did there, flatten the 6, make it major, spell it out, right? That's it in the key of E major. If you were to do that, flatten the 6 from C sharp to C, make it major, C major. It's easy for most people to remember. So you spell out the C major scale, but you spell it out in the order of 3, 2, 1, 7, 6, 5, 4. So that would be E, D, C, B, A, G, and F. Okay. And you would do that, you would play your E note, and then as we know, we would do them each as their own separate major scale, but with the context being E. So you keep that E drone going. That's the second reason why. It's because you're able to keep that E drum going in the key of E major, right? You can keep it at the top, it's out of your way, you can continue on with the strings below there. It's definitely important to be able to use that top string, so if you have the ability to somehow record a chord or a note or some way to keep context, it's definitely good to improvise that way and be able to use your top string. But this is maybe you're gone with your acoustic guitar or something, or maybe you're showing someone an example. You don't have the luxuries of being able to just go onto YouTube right away. Okay, so that's the reasons. Okay, so you play the major scale on each one of the notes of the C major scale with the backdrop of E, and there you go. And this is, and the position I'm doing for that major scale is just simply 7/9, 6/7/9, 6/8/9. Same shape for each. Okay, so I was starting on an E, E major. Next one, in the order of 3, 2, 1, 7, 6, 5, 4 of the C major scale would be from E, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so you would be starting the D major scale over this E. Certainly hear a difference, right? You hear the Dorian sound. Okay, so now over this E, now we'll play a C major scale, and this will be for Phrygian. And this is also why I really like it, because a lot of people know the C major scale. It's a friendly place. So all you have to do is have an E drone and play C major, and all of a sudden you're sounding so exotic, you're sounding Phrygian. So I think that's really neat as well. Alright, nothing I'm playing is perfect here, but you get the point. Okay, so that's a neat way of, wherever you're at, being able to play the modes using the E as your backdrop. Hopefully some of that made sense. Hopefully I described it in a way that made sense to somebody other than me. Also, that little trick about flattening the 6, making it major, spelling it out in 3, 2, 1, 7, 6, 5, 4. I've never heard anybody else do that. So I'm sure there's other videos of that, or they might even have a simpler way or a better formula. So that's more, I actually organically figured that out. And that's also one thing that's great about this. Once you memorize all these formulas, you memorize these positions, and as you can start doing these different pathways because you know these formulas, you can figure out these different things for yourself organically. It's kind of like if there was like a mathematician or something, or and they know these formulas to get the radius and the circumference of a triangle or a circle. It doesn't matter what shape is thrown at them. They know the formulas to be able to figure this thing out. So it's very important to start memorizing this stuff. It doesn't matter where you start or how you start or when you get there. Hopefully it's sooner than later, but as long as you get there, and hopefully somebody got there because of this video. And if anybody has any questions, or maybe something they'd like me to elaborate more on, or I didn't quite explain something as good as they would have liked, certainly ask. Anyway, hope that helps somebody.